Alright, hello everyone, and welcome to a new episode of, what was it called? Midlife Crisis, the show where I talk about every single DC crossover event, like massive crossover event that involves a lot of characters. This week, we're going to be talking about Superman, Panic in the Sky, which was an 8-issue event that happened within Superman comics. The reason why I'm including this is because it involves a lot of different characters. It's the only reason I'm doing it, because it's got characters from Batman, to Green Lantern, to Shazam, to Deathstroke, all appearing in this event. There isn't really anything to know before going into this, because they kind of explain it, and I'll explain it as it goes. Whenever characters appear, I will explain who they are, because there's a couple of characters in this that you might not know exactly what version they are. Like, Supergirl appears in this, but it's not the Supergirl that everyone knows. It's a different Supergirl. Brainiac appears in this. There's a bunch of different characters. Maxima, if you remember her from that Superman annual. Without further ado, let's just get straight into it. So let's go. Before we start, I will also mention everyone that wrote this whole event. So it's written by Dan Jurgens, Jerry Ordway, Louis Simonson, and Roger Stern. They all wrote it together between the different titles. The art is by John Bogdanove, Tom Grummett, Dan Jurgens, Bob McLeod, Brett Breeding, Doug Hazelwood, Dennis Jank, and Dennis Rodia. So that's the whole event. So we won't need to really mention any of the writers and artists because I've just mentioned all of them. So we can just get straight into the story and explain everything. So the issue starts off on an alien planet where this alien woman is being harassed by this alien guy. And then Superman shows up and he's wearing a cowboy suit. And he gets swiped by this guy, and his costume seems to be a different color than Superman's costume usually is. And that's because this isn't the real Superman. This is somebody disguised as Superman or in the form of Superman. So he fights these guys because they all turn on him because he's trying to protect this woman. So they all start fighting him. They blast him with their guns and realize that their guns aren't doing anything to them. So they all get blasted by this pretend Superman. This woman starts hitting on Superman, this alien woman, but then this guy comes in and is like, "Hey, Superman, I need to talk to you in private. It's really important." So he takes Superman off. And then we find out that this alien woman is actually telling this guy named Draga what had happened. And Draga is the champion of Warworld, or at least he used to be. So Warworld snatched Superman, and Mongol forced Superman to fight Draga. And Superman beat Draga, but then refused to kill him. And ever since then, Draga has been wearing Superman's symbol in order to remind him of that. And he's created like this, he wants to hunt down Superman and beat him and kill him, for sparing his life. Mongol has lost Warworld to somebody else. We'll find out who that is, because Mongol has fallen. And now somebody else owns Warworld, and we'll find out who that is a bit later. But yeah, Draga's trying to hunt down Superman so he can find him, and he comes across Maxima, and Draga and Maxima decide to team up because Maxima says, I know somebody who can help you find Superman and kill him. Meanwhile, Jimmy Olsen is currently living with another character called Bibbo Babowski, who is a massive fan of Superman. He's kind of like the Flash Thompson of, this universe, where, he's a massive fan of Superman. He's not a bully, but he's a massive fan of Superman. So he's living with Jimmy Olsen. Jimmy Olsen has lost his job at the Daily Planet at the moment and is trying to get back on his feet. He's starting down the road to becoming a photographer. So, he's been taking photos. He's just recently received some photos of, some robots he took pictures of. So it looks like his career is going to be on the up soon. Superman is dealing with a group of intergangsters, the real Superman. He shows up at an intergang warehouse where he takes them all down and hands them all over to Dan Turpin. And as he flies away, a character known as Helgramite, who is currently hunting down Lex Luthor, sees Superman as he could be worthy of fighting Helgramite. But even he won't be aware of my plans to assassinate Lex Luthor. And so at the moment, Lex Luthor's old body was dying of cancer, and so Lex Luthor cloned himself a new body, which was like a red-haired Australian version of himself. and he's pretending that his clone... So he's currently in the clone body, and he's acting as if this clone is his own son. So he's pretending to be his own son at the moment. But nobody knows that. They think that, like, this is actually Lex Luthor's son, but it's actually just Lex Luthor in a clone body, but nobody knows that. So Superman finds Jimmy Olsen and Bibbo and learns of Jimmy Olsen's new job. Meanwhile, this alien guy talks to this fake Superman, asking for his help, but then, like, this fake Superman is like, I don't have any memories of these things, because I'm not the real Superman. Like, I think you have me mistaken with somebody else. And then Draga shows up and is like, I'm gonna beat you up, Superman, for humiliating me and not killing me. And he's like, hey, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't have memories of that. Like, we didn't fight each other. So Draga starts fighting this fake Superman and trying to kill him while Maxima watches from a distance. But then this Superman disappears, and Maxima and Draga are both surprised because they're like, we didn't know Superman had these powers to, fade away. And then he starts shooting psionic blasts. And Maxima's like, wow, like, he doesn't have these powers. Like, what's going on? Is this Superman? Draga throws a massive boulder at Superman, like, at this Superman, and then goes to, like, wail on him. And that's when this fake Superman turns into their real, or, like, one of their other forms, which is Supergirl. So it turns out this Superman was actually a character known as Matrix in disguise. Now, Matrix is a protoplasmic being created by a Lex Luthor from an alternate reality in order to protect their planet from some Kryptonians that had escaped from the Phantom Zone. So he created Matrix, and then Matrix took the form of Supergirl and has been Supergirl from this day forward. And now Matrix is under the control of Brainiac, who has taken over Warworld. So Brainiac transports Draga and Supergirl to Warworld, and Draga refuses to, to serve Brainiac. So Brainiac controls Supergirl, like Matrix. I'll call her Matrix so that you know what I'm talking about. Controls Matrix to kill Draga, or, like, at least beat him up. And so she beats up Draga to a pulp, and Brainiac is like, we're not going to kill Draga, because he could be of use to us, but what we're going to do is, like, I have a grand scheme to defeat and kill Superman once and for all, and it will involve you, it will involve Maxima, it will involve Draga, and it will involve Warworld. And so we kind of leave off issue 1 of Brainiac revealing himself as the mastermind of this whole plan. And that's where issue 1, that's where the prologue to Panic in the Sky ends. Alright, and so we move on to Panic in the Sky First Strike, which is the next part of Panic in the Sky. So it starts off at Cadmus Labs with 2 characters. We got Double X, and we've got the Guardian, and Double X is having a psychic attack, because he's like this psychic guy. He can sense something is coming to Metropolis, and the Cadmus Labs collapse on him and Guardian. Meanwhile, Clark and Lois are at a local, like, cafe, and suddenly they hear a massive explosion, and so Clark gets changed into Superman and heads off to see what's going on, while Lois decides that she's going to get some much-needed photographs of this cataclysm that's happening. Superman discovers that it is Brainiac's ship, so he goes to attack the ship, but the ship blasts him. Meanwhile, Emil Hamilton sees what's going on in the city, and he decides that he needs to head off and help Superman, so he decides to do so. He decides to head off to, like, one of his nearby labs, where he has technology in order to communicate with Superman. Bibbo and Jimmy get caught right in the middle of the destruction. Jimmy needs to go check on his mum, so he leaves Bibbo to help Emil, because Emil happens to run into them. So Bibbo and Emil head off to communicate with Superman, while Jimmy heads off to make sure his mum is safe. Superman continues the fight with Brainiac's skull ship and manages to bust his way inside, where he gets attacked by a bunch of robots. Superman fights the robots and manages to make it all the way inside, where he finds Nothing. He doesn't find anyone in there that's controlling the robot. Meanwhile, Lex Luthor is planning on trying to assist the city against Brainiac's attack. Superman gets attacked psychically by Brainiac because this giant skull ship was just a distraction. The ship starts crashing to the Earth, but because Superman is being attacked psychically, he can't do anything. Like, he doesn't know what's happening. So Bibbo and Emil use a giant, satellite to broadcast their voices to Superman, which manages to help him break through Brainiac's psychic hold so that he can stop the ship from crashing into the city and instead throw it into the ocean. So the power of friendship gives Superman the strength to stop it. But Brainiac is like, that was just a distraction. I'll show you what's coming. Warworld is coming to Earth. So prepare yourself, because once Warworld comes, we're going to destroy everything. So Superman finds Lois, and Clark says to her that he needs to get as many heroes together as he can to prepare for the coming of Warworld. And Brainiac is like, get as many allies as you can. It doesn't matter, because I've got allies of my own. And it has him with Draga and Matrix and Maxima, and they're all together, and he's like, my plan begins. And that's where this issue ends. This one was a pretty quick one to get through, because it's a lot of just Superman fighting this giant skull ship. So yeah, pretty easy one to explain. And so the next issue that we get into is going to be we're gonna get some crossover stuff. We're gonna get some other heroes showing up. So looking forward to that. So moving on to part 3, we are introduced to a character known as Metron, who is a new god who is connected to this thing called the Mobius chair. He basically has the ability to travel through time and do pretty much anything, and he's kind of like a watcher of the DC universe. Whenever whenever the Monitor doesn't exist, Metron kind of serves the role of the Monitor, especially now that the Monitor is dead. So he goes to this place known as Almerac, which has been attacked by Warworld, or at least he reckons it's been attacked by Warworld. And so he wants to go and warn people, and Brainiac doesn't want Metron warning anybody about what's going on, so he uses his powers to attack Metron's brain and take over Metron so that he's on his side. And then the Mobius chair disappears and transports itself to where Superman and Guardian and Double X are, because they're at Cadmus Labs trying to rebuild everything after Brainiac's attack. So the Mobius chair appears to them, and because the Mobius chair has appeared there, Orion and Light Ray have been sent to Cadmus Labs by the Mother Box in order to find Metron, because they know Metron is in trouble. So they show up and they're like, "Where's Metron? What are you doing with him? If you don't tell us where Metron is, we'll kill you." And Superman is like, "Metron's probably been captured by Brainiac, so I would assume that's where he is. But we shouldn't go and attack Warworld yet, because it's coming to Earth anyway, and we need to prepare for the attack." And Orion and Light Ray are just like, "Screw that, we'll go and deal with it ourselves." And so they head off to deal with Warworld, and Superman tries to catch up with them, but they're gone. He assumes that they've gone through a boom tube, so it's too late, and he decides that he's going to see if they can beat Brainiac and Warworld, and then if they can't, then he'll do something. So he waits, and Orion and Light Ray go and attack Warworld, and they get beaten up by Matrix and Maxima. And Brainiac uses his powers to show Superman that Light Ray and Orion have lost. So Superman decides that he needs to gather together a task force in order to, an army, in order to attack Warworld. But because most of Earth's heroes can't breathe in space, he needs equipment in order to help them survive in space. So he heads to Emil to get him to build equipment for him, which Emil agrees to do. And then Superman decides that he needs someone with tactical expertise to lead them. So he goes and he finds Deathstroke, because he knows that Deathstroke is a military man. So he asked Deathstroke to join him and lead the army because, you know, he knows all about leadership and stuff because he's been in the military. And so Deathstroke agrees, and he's like, oh wow, a space adventure, that sounds like fun. Never been to space before. So he agrees to join Superman's group as their, like, tactical leader. Clark then goes and recruits Wonder Woman and Aquaman and Captain Marvel and all these other heroes, and they all meet up in this base so that Superman can tell them what's going on. I'm gonna try and list off every single character. I don't know all of these characters, but I'll try and list off as many as I can. He's got the Metal Men, he's got Gangbuster, he's got Blue Beetle, he's got Booster Gold, he's got Guy Gardner, he's got Wonder Woman, Deathstroke, Fire, Ice, Wally West, Batman, Elongated Man, Rocket Red, Kilowog, Sentinel, or no, Liberty, I think his name is. Agent Liberty, Starman, Big Barda, Miracle Man. I think Blacklash is here for some reason. I don't know what he's gonna do. And then you got Guardian, and then the other characters I don't know. I don't know who they are. One of them might be Black Racer. I know Captain Marvel's there. That's everyone I can list off. There's a few others who I don't recognize. Yeah, so he's brought a lot of heroes together. And then they realize that Aquaman is missing. Because Aquaman just didn't show up to the meeting. He decided to go into the oceans because they're being polluted. And so he gets attacked by Brainiac and kidnapped by Brainiac's giant skull ship. And they see Aquaman outside their window having been captured. And so Guy Gardner's like, oh well, I guess this means war. We gotta save Aquaman now because he's an idiot. And that's where it ends. It ends with, like, Superman recruits Aquaman, and then Aquaman immediately gets captured. Like, what the hell? What the hell, Superman? What's wrong with you? Well, what the hell, Aquaman? What's wrong with you? And so that's where Chapter 3 ends. And so we lead off into Chapter 4, where Superman and his superhero forces, and some supervillains, team up to fight Brainiac. So we're officially halfway through the event, and we move on to Counter-Strike. So this issue obviously starts off with Brainiac's ship attacking LexCorp after having kidnapped Aquaman. So Superman, Captain Marvel, Mr. Miracle, Guy Gardner, Mon-El, you know, the Wonder Woman, Agent Liberty, and Booster Gold all go out to fight the ship while, you know, Deathstroke and Batman and some of the other characters stay behind because they can't fly and they don't have superpowers. So, they all fight Brainiac's ship. Booster Gold tries to save Aquaman, but Aquaman disappears, and Superman realizes, he's just like, hey, it's like, that wasn't the real Aquaman, that was just a mental image of Aquaman created by Brainiac. The real Aquaman is probably inside the ship. Guy Gardner uses his powers to destroy the ship, or, like, cause it to crash into the earth using a giant construct hand. And then Double X appears and is like, hey guys, before you enter that ship, there's probably some traps. So, Mr. Miracle, I'll use my mental powers alongside your abilities and we'll deactivate all the traps before we go in. So, Mr. Miracle deactivates all the traps with the help of Double X, and then they head into the ship where they find a giant metal silo where Green Lantern is like, Aquaman's probably in there, so I'll open it up. And Captain Marvel's like, wait, no, I've used the wisdom of Solomon and decided that there's probably booby traps, so maybe we should have Superman use his X-ray vision just to see if there's any trapped inside. And so Superman uses his X-ray vision as like, there are traps, but if I use my heat vision fast enough and hot enough, we'll be able to open it up without any problems. And so he melts the tube open, they find Aquaman, they set him free, and then they decide to rewire the ship so that they can use it to travel to Warworld. Maxima wants to go to Earth and fight Superman, but Brainiac is like, no, you need to stay here because they're going to be coming to us. What we'll do is we'll send some minions to Earth that can keep Batman busy. So Superman and a bunch of heroes are on Brainiac's ship. The Flash is here, but he doesn't do anything. Like, Wally is here, but he doesn't do anything. And then Deathstroke's here. And he does more in this event than Wally does. So yeah, you got Superman and a bunch of characters like Deathstroke and Flash and Agent Liberty and the Elongated Man. So they're all heading over to Warworld. And meanwhile, Batman, Blue Beetle, Gangbuster, a character called Thorn, Aquaman, Crimson Fox, and Nightwing are all fighting Warworld minions on Earth. Superman and the gang land on Warworld, and they're actually pulled into Warworld by Brainiac, which is exactly what they want. They land in an arena, and then Superman comes out of the ship and comes face to face with Draga, who obviously wants to kill Superman, but then Guy Gardner shows up and is like, hey, you're gonna fight me. And then Maxima shows up and is like, hey, Superman, I'm gonna kill you because you don't love me. And so she starts fighting Superman, and Draga's like, hey, he's mine. And then all the other heroes come in and they all start fighting Maxima and Draga. And then Matrix is sent down to help Draga and Maxima. And they all start fighting. But then Brainiac realizes that he's losing control of Draga and Matrix because they're so busy fighting Superman that, like, he's starting to lose control over them. So Matrix is starting to realize that she's actually a friend of Superman and not a villain. And Draga is realizing that, like, he's being forced to fight Superman against his will, which he doesn't like. Deathstroke decides to go with Ice and the Metal Men to go and find Orion and Light Ray and Metron so that they can set them free, while Wonder Girl and Captain Marvel and Dr. Fate and Fire and Guy Gardner and Red Rocket all head off to go and monitor the rest of Warworld to see if there's any people that need help. While Superman stays behind and manages to convince Matrix and Draga to team up against Brainiac alongside him. So now the only ally that Brainiac has left on his side is Maxima. But Brainiac doesn't care because his plan is still going according to plan, which is that he's splintered up the group. So Superman is now on his own. The only people he has is Matrix and Draga. The rest of his group is split up into two separate groups. So Brainiac is planning on splitting them up and then taking them out. So I guess we'll find out what happens. Draga reluctantly agrees to help Superman as long as Superman promises to fight him, possibly to the death. He really wants Superman to kill him, because he really wants to kill Superman, but if he's going to get beaten by Superman, he wants Superman to kill him. But Superman's like, nah, I don't kill. I'm not going to kill you. But, like, if Draga helps Superman, will Superman kill him, or will Matrix decide to kill Draga in Superman's place, fight Draga and kill him? I guess we'll find out in the forthcoming issues of Panic in the Sky. I'm enjoying this event so far. It helps that it's very short, and it's just pretty straightforward. I'm enjoying it. Good. So the next part of Panic in the Sky begins with Brainiac and Maxima watching all of the heroes having split up, with Brainiac just being like, it's okay, Maxima, like, everything is going according to plan. While Maxima believes that things are going to shit, Brainiac believes that this is exactly what he wants. So he reveals that he actually plans on taking control of the different heroes by attaching these, like, head things to them that take control of their minds. So he gains control of Guy Gardner, and with the power of Guy Gardner is able to put Mon-El out of commission. And then the Flash gets his mind controlled, and so Deathstroke and Ice have to fight against him. Brainiac stole a couple of mother boxes from Orion and Light Ray, but before he can use them, they disappear, which leaves Brainiac shocked. He's just like, what? I was going to use those, and now they're gone. Superman, Matrix, and Draga try to get to... Or, like, Superman tells Matrix and Draga to get to the ship that they've taken control of so that they can reunite with Double X, and that Superman will meet them there a bit later. So they head to the ship where they find Double X, and Double X reveals that he has a mother box that is keeping Brainiac from controlling his mind and from seeing where they and it stops Brainiac from seeing where they are. And that they might be able to use the mother box in order to actually get further into Warworld and closer to Brainiac. Where Superman shows up and he's like, well, we gotta figure out how to do that quickly because Earth is in danger. Earth's heroes that are still on Earth, like Batman and Gangbuster and Nightwing and stuff, they're all still fighting the forces of Warworld, and that's when Lex's team shows up, like Lex Luthor's security team show up to fight them as well, and they draw the Warworld minions to the edge of the city where the ocean is, so that Aquaman can get them from that side and fight them as well, because he was in the water. Like, Aquaman ambushes them. So, Brainiac is getting really annoyed because he can't control Double X's mind, and he can't figure out why, so he's getting more and more desperate. Double X uses the mother box to transport the ship further into Warworld, and so Superman and Matrix head out of the ship in order to try and find Brainiac. And Brainiac is like, send people on the ship so that we can he sends Maxima and a bunch of his minions to go to the sector that the ship has appeared in to try and deal with Double X and Draga and Superman and Matrix. A group of characters from the Fourth World are fighting off this these group of monsters, and then Captain Marvel shows up to help them. And then one of the Fourth Worlders reveals that she has a mother box, and she uses it to fuse all 5 of them together to become Infinity Man. Like, it's literally like a Megazord kind of thing where they all join together and become one dude. And so they fight together. Matrix finds Big Barda killing Scott, Mr. Miracle. She distracts Big Barda long enough that Scott is able to pull the mind control thing from her head, saving her. But Matrix is knocked out in the process because Big Barda used a really powerful electric rod against her or something, like energy rod. But she's fine. She'll probably wake up in a bit, but she's just been knocked out for now. Brainiac is realizing that Double X is using his power to block out all of his signals, so he's having a hard time keeping an eye on everyone because all of his cameras are being blocked out, like the ones that are connected to his mind. And then Double X starts feeling pain in his mind, and Draga's like, what's wrong? And he's like, we must make haste, Draga. I can feel Brainiac's rage growing. Hear me, my thralls. You shall hunt down my enemies. And it's Brainiac ordering all of the people that he has under control to go and fight Superman and stuff. So he's got quite a few people under control now. He's got Agent Liberty, he's got Wally West, he's got Guy Gardner, Deathstroke, Metamorpho, Booster Gold, Ice, Guardian, he's got Mon-El, he's got Rocket Red, he's got Elongator Man, he's got Fire. So they're all under Brainiac's control, and we'll find out what happens in the next part. It's funny, the cover to the next issue is actually an homage to Crisis on Infinite Earths. It has Matrix holding Draga instead of Superman holding Supergirl. That's fun. So Maxima takes leadership of Brainiac's forces on Warworld in order to fight off Earth's heroes, or what remain of them, because most of them have been controlled by Brainiac now, and they're all fighting Superman. Matrix shows up to try and stop Maxima and her minions, but Maxima manages to knock her out with a psychic attack from Brainiac. Or just a psychic attack from herself or something. Matrix gets knocked out by a psychic attack. It's not exactly known how, but it's assumed, like, Maxima says that she did it. So I guess Maxima has, like, psychic powers. So yeah, a bunch of the controlled heroes fight Superman, while Double X and Draga go to find Orion, Light Ray, and Metron, which they do. They find them, Draga sets them free, and Double X uses the Mother Box to restore their powers. Kilowog manages to free the Metal Men from their control. Captain Marvel and Infinity Man decide to escape from the Monster Society because Double X needs their help. So Captain Marvel, so they go to find Double X. Same with everyone else. Maxima reveals to Matrix that the reason she's working for Brainiac is because Brainiac has her world held hostage. But she's just pretending to serve Brainiac. She does want to turn against him. She just doesn't really know how. And Matrix manages to convince her that maybe, if Superman dies, there's never going to be a chance that Maxima is ever going to end up with him. And that's all Maxima really cares about, is ending up with Superman and hoping that the union between her and Superman would eventually save her world. So she is rethinking her partnership with Brainiac. The fight between Superman and the controlled heroes continues. Double X shows up with Metron and Orion and Light Ray. Metron reveals that he could reverse the powers of Brainiac's devices if he has one. So Orion steals Guy Gardner's and gives it to Metron, and Metron uses it to free everyone from Brainiac's control. The heroes on Earth continue fighting the alien forces. Jimmy Olsen now has a job with this guy named Thornton, who is like a rival to Perry White, and so he's taking photographs of the aliens attacking, but his helicopter crashes into the ocean, but Aquaman saves him, and Jimmy reunites with Lois Lane. Draga and Matrix fight together against Brainiac's forces and against the Flash and Guy Gardner, who is under control again for some reason. Guy Gardner is shown with another device on his head, even though he just had his taken off by Orion, which is weird. And Brainiac's like, alright, this is getting out of hand. It's time for me to activate my secret weapon. Now, I could have used my Doomsday weapon, but I'm not going to use that. I'm going to use this. And he calls forth an organic construct which starts destroying Warworld. And Matrix decides that she's going to go into the construct and sacrifice herself in order to make it vulnerable enough for the heroes to destroy it. But Draga is like, nah, I'm going to be the one that sacrifices myself. And so he jumps into the organic construct and kills himself, weakening it enough so that Superman and the gang can, Kilowog and Guy Gardner can grab it, throw it out into space, and cause it to explode. Because Draga was inside it, so, it blew up as soon as they threw it out into space. Kilowog then uses his Green Lantern ring to reconstruct Draga's atoms, but because of the way the ring works, he can't bring Draga back to life. And so Matrix decides to turn into Draga's form and fight as Draga for the rest of the comic, so that Draga's name can live on in history and people will believe that he's going to have taken part in the final battle. And that's when Maxima shows up and says, hey, I'm going to turn on Brainiac and I'm going to team up with you guys now because I'm sick of working for Brainiac and I don't want my world to get destroyed. And Brainiac's just like, how noble and how futile. They acted quickly, but not quickly enough. The orbit has been achieved and the process has been activated by which I will shrink Earth's cities. First Metropolis, and then the others, and then I will crush those cities beneath my heel. I wonder how many cities will I destroy before Earth's heroes beg me to accept their surrender. And that's where the issue ends. It ends with what is supposedly going to be the final battle, or the precursor to the final battle, because there's 2 issues left. One of them is the final battle, the other one is the epilogue. So I'm guessing that the final battle is going to happen next. Brainiac's probably going to get defeated, and then we'll get to see what happens to wrap this whole story up. The next issue's cover is actually an iconic one, a very iconic image of all of Earth's heroes as skeletons in space. Very iconic and a pretty haunting image. It looks pretty good. Alright, so we've made it to the final chapter before the epilogue of Panic in the Sky. The heroes in Metropolis are still fighting against Warworld's forces alongside LexCorp. Meanwhile, everyone that is inside Warworld decides that they should split up and try and take Brainiac from 3 different sides. Because if they all come at him, there's no way that they'll see him coming. Like, if they come at him from different directions. Maximo wants to go with them, but Superman is like, no, Maximo, you're not coming with us. Like, you've got to stay here because we don't trust you. And, so, like, Guy Gardner, you can keep an eye on Maxima and make sure that she doesn't go anywhere. You know, keep an eye on her, and if she moves, do whatever you think is necessary in order to stop her from leaving. Even if you have to be ruthless. And Guy Gardner's like, yeah, heck yeah. Try and run away, Maxima, I dare you to. And the Metal Men are like, you want her to run away, don't you? And Guy Gardner's like, yeah, of course, I want to beat the crap out of her. So the teams all split up and start, you know, fighting the forces of Warworld. And then they all start getting, psychically attacked by Brainiac. Wait, I thought there was something else that happened. Oh, right, yeah. So I tried to turn the pages. The pages are so thin, they stuck together. I remembered something else was happening. The Flash was sent up ahead in order to attack Brainiac from behind, but because Brainiac is connected to Warworld, he saw the Flash coming and was able to psychically attack him. And then he psychically attacks everyone else, and because he's connected to Warworld, he's able to do a massive psychic attack on everyone, which starts killing them, and it also kills all of his minions that are in Warworld as well, because Brainiac doesn't care who lives anymore, because he's about to take over Metropolis. He starts sending out these golden discs into Metropolis, which start, like, connecting together to create a giant net around Metropolis. Blue Beetle tries to destroy these discs, but he can't do anything. So they're kind of just left as sitting ducks trying to wonder, like, how they're going to do this. Superman and the gang, like, they all come back together and they're like, we can't attack him directly because he's going to kill us with his psychic attacks. And that's when Maxima is like, this is the time that you're going to need me and my psionic abilities, because I'm the only one who can actually stand up against Brainiac. And Guy Gardner decides to let Maxima go. So Guy Gardner uses his power to protect himself from the psychic attacks, because he can do that. And he creates a construct of Thor's hammer, which he uses to smash a hole through Brainiac's main wall where he is, so that the Metal Men can bust in, because they've transformed into a tank, allowing Maxima to fly into the room and start a psychic battle with Brainiac. Brainiac starts to gain the upper hand over Maxima, but while he's distracted, the Flash throws a piece of glass at him, which cuts the cables connecting him to Warworld, allowing Maxima to gain power over Brainiac and start killing him with her psionic abilities. Metropolis is in deep danger, but as they're about to be destroyed by, like, these giant floating discs, the heroes from Warworld transport back to Metropolis and start destroying all the discs with their powers. Maxima starts killing Brainiac, and Brainiac is like, I still claim victory, and he pulls a lever which releases a mysterious object into space, and Maxima is like, no, you will claim only death. And Superman stops her and is like, you're killing him! And she's like, so, is that not the idea? And he's like, no, the idea is to turn Warworld back. If we kill without regret, we're no better than Brainiac. Am I too late? Is he dying? And that's when Maxima is like, no, consider him lobotomized. And anyway, In any case, that which constituted Brainiac, his very mind, is gone forever. And so Superman is like, yeah, we did. It took a lot of good people and a lot of sacrifice, but we won. I've never thought myself that way, Maxima, but you might be right. Still, the important thing is that Brainiac won't ever hurt us again. And we see like the little metal ball that Brainiac released in space, and it's like, the end? With a question mark? Because there is an epilogue for us to read that comes off right after this. It's actually not very long, because I think it's only the first half of the next issue. So let's see how this event officially ends. And so with the epilogue, we have... so Superman decides the fate of Brainiac, which is that he's not going to kill him, and that he's actually going to give him to Metron so that Metron can study Brainiac's brain and learn from it. Maxima hates this decision, but they don't really have a choice. The Overseer of Warworld isn't good enough to be a leader. They're repairing Warworld, but they deem him not good enough to lead Warworld's people. So Orion and Lightray decide to stay behind on Warworld and govern it until they find somebody worthy of governing Warworld from now on. Maxima tries to get it on with Orion, is like, maybe I should stay here and be with you. And Orion's like, your charms have no play on me, Maxima. Orion is no lapdog. And she's like, pity, you would make a fine mate. And that's when Guy Gardner hits on her and is like, hey, if you're looking, Maxie, why not come back to Earth and see my etchings? Maxie's like, perhaps, after I have retrieved my warship. So, Metron leaves with Brainiac's body. Superman decides to head back to Earth with all the other heroes, thanks to the Mother Box technology. So they go and visit Deathstroke and Wonder Woman, who are going around finding any dead bodies. Slade finds the body of a child, and they talk about how unfortunate it is that like children are the biggest victims when it comes to things like this. So Superman and the gang show up, and they all decide to head back to Earth via a boom tube. And when they get back to Earth, Metropolis is open arms, celebrating them on their return. They're like, yeah, woo! Big parade and stuff for all the heroes. I'm trying to turn the page. And then Superman gives a massive speech about how like he couldn't do this without his friends, without everyone else, and even though the Justice League is gone, they were still able to come together and protect the world. And because the Justice League is gone at the moment, you have to read Justice League International to find out about that. But the Justice League split up, so Superman talks about how like they got to find other ways to communicate with each other and to help each other now that there's no Justice League. Meanwhile, Matrix, it has created a little funeral for Draga because Superman dedicated their parade to Draga as like his memorial, because even though he started off as an enemy, he ended up being one of their greatest allies and sacrificed himself, and without him they probably wouldn't have won. So Matrix, who is in the form of Supergirl now, gives a little memorial for Draga on this other planet next to a character known as Cleric, who is a character that Draga was associated with. And then she states that she needs to head to Earth because she believes that that's where her purpose is, and that she wants to go to Earth and be Supergirl officially, because she took this form when Draga attacked her, and now she's officially going to become the Supergirl, like the official Supergirl from now on. So it's not going to be it's not going to be Kara. It's just going to be Matrix, and she's going to be Supergirl, and I'm pretty sure she's Supergirl for a long time after this. Pretty much right up until the early 2000s when they finally bring Kara back to life. But until then, it's going to be Matrix. So she heads off in a ship to Earth as Supergirl, and that's where it ends. If you're wondering about the space device thing that the Brainiac sent into space, that's not included in this collection that I have in this trade paperback. I tried to get the most recent one, but the one I was sent was the one from the 90s, which just has the main event in it and not the issue that comes after this. But many people thought, and it's kind of like a Mandela effect, that this event was the beginning of Doomsday, and that the device that Brainiac had sent out into space was Doomsday because it looks a lot like the thing that Doomsday comes out of, like the big capsule. But that's not the case. The capsule that Doomsday was in was already in the ground, like underground in Earth, so there's no way that they could be the same thing. And also, the next issue after this straight up disproves that theory because nobody read it, and it's the device is just a weapon that I think is used by Lex Luthor or somebody, or maybe Brainiac in like a future issue ends up using the device, and it's just a Doomsday weapon. I think it's because they called it Doomsday in this, so people assumed that it was that Doomsday. But I'm pretty sure that like Dan Jurgens and Jerry Ordway and everyone that was working on Superman at the time, none of them had come up with the concept of Doomsday yet. Like, Doomsday was the thing that they came up with when they were making the event. Like, there was no build up. They just did it. They did the event, and they were like, we're gonna kill Superman. Let's create a creature that can kill Superman, like, right now. But yeah, that was Panic in the Sky. A fun event, a very short event. A fun one. The only reason I did it is because A, it was short, B, it involves a lot of characters. You know, it's got like Batman, Deathstroke, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, Shazam, all of them. Like, a lot of people. Yeah, it was good. You don't need to read Post-Crisis Superman in order to enjoy this, but it's recommended to read a lot of Post-Crisis stuff that happened before this so that you can enjoy it more, because there are a lot of references and things to characters' post-crisis histories that will make this event more enjoyable. I would rank this higher than Crisis on Infinite Earths, in my opinion, because while Crisis on Infinite Earths started a whole new millennium of DC, this as an event was better. Not only was it shorter, but it was also a lot less confusing and a lot less meandering, and it just kind of got straight to the point, and it did it, and it was cool, and it was the first event to have Brainiac be an actual force of evil. Now, that would eventually lead to Brainiac being used in this way too often, where he is a planet-sized threat too much. But I'm not going to knock this storyline for starting that, because they didn't know that this event would affect Brainiac's character so much in the future. So I don't think you can blame this event for turning Brainiac into this Justice League-sized threat that people have a problem with these days. Like, a lot of people like him being a smaller threat that mainly fights Superman, and they don't like him being this world-ending threat. You can't blame this event for doing that. I think they were just trying to do something different with Brainiac, and I think what they did was very interesting. I like how him shrinking the planet wasn't his main goal. Like, it was still his main goal, but it wasn't the whole part of his plan, you know? I think it makes sense for a character like Brainiac to be considered a big threat, depending on what his plan is. He doesn't always have to be a big threat, but, like, I think it's fine to every now and then have an event where Brainiac is the big bad. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I think this event did that really well. So, yeah, if you want to read a short event that involves a lot of different characters helping Superman fight a villain like Brainiac, I would recommend reading this. In fact, if you want an event where Brainiac is the main villain, this is probably the best one to read, because I don't think there have been any other good crossover events that involve Brainiac being the main villain. The only ones I can think of are Convergence, and that's it. And we all know that Convergence is not that good, so read this if you're a Brainiac fan. And that's going to be it for this week's episode of Midlife Crisis. Next week, I'm going to be starting a much bigger event, Eclipso: The Darkness Within, which was another annual event similar to Armageddon, where every single part of the story is told within annuals. So we're going to be starting that next week. If you enjoy the podcast, please, give me a follow, rate the podcast, share it around to anyone who you think would be interested in listening to this podcast. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I hope to I hope you listen to next week's episode as well. I'm hoping to eventually grow the audience enough that I'll be able to start doing like polls and like Q&As and things, so that I can like answer questions on the podcast and things like that. Polls for like what stories I should read in the future for the podcast, specifically like for people listening, as little special episodes and stuff. Who knows? Maybe when I finish The Flash, if there's enough people listening, I can do a poll where you can vote on what series I cover next after The Flash. Like, I'll give some options and you can pick one and I'll do it. Yeah. That's going to be it for this episode, and I'll see you next week.